Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that whatever you get up to today, Wednesday the 8th of March, when we also commemorate International Women's Day, I hope you have a nice and pleasant one. We've woken up unexpectedly to snow, we believe, in England, my child and I, and my child absolutely loves it. We should be gearing up for spring. Instead, it's the coldest day of the year yet. And that's how unpredictable the weather is in England. Well, I suppose in the whole of the United Kingdom. And so it's gone all right. When it should be warming up, it's actually got colder. I want to continue looking at tenses today with the conditionals. If I was to introduce this tense before I looked at basic ones, you might not have stayed on this platform. Now, if you listened to my statement intently, you will realize that I used a conditional tense. So I was looking at a situation that is imagined and dependent on another situation occurring, something else might not have happened. That's very much the conditional. A lot of people shy away from the conditionals because they find them tricky. What I'm going to do on this page is I'm going to make English accessible to people who speak English as a second or foreign language, and I'm going to bring it down to your level, because I want to make it so easy to understand that you use these tenses in your material. As writers, we often write about situations that are unreal or imagined. And one of the tenses you might want to master are the conditionals. I find it hard to read when someone writes in just one tense. So when you just write in the present simple or the simple past, your writing is quite basic, isn't it? When you start moving it up, taking it up a notch, moving it up to another level, when you start incorporating different tenses, you increase your chances of getting published and taken more seriously, and also your material is much more enjoyable. So I'm going to look at different conditions, the conditionals, and I'm going to introduce them in a basic way as 4 main types. Do not worry too much about the technical or grammatical name. I'm going to show you how they work, and by the end of this video, I hope you'll be comfortable enough to use these tenses in your writing. I'm going to list and then come back and explain. There are 4 main kinds of conditionals. The zero conditional. Please have a look at the screen. The first conditional. The second conditional. And the third conditional. I'm going to keep it at that. You might have come across other websites where it's more complicated. Or I don't know where you studied English. But this is the most basic way that I think it should be explained. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to start off with a zero conditional. And it's conjugated or made up with an if plus present simple plus present simple. It generally describes a situation that is true, something that we accept as a given fact. My example would be, if it rains, the grass gets wet. That's a fact, that if it rains, you expect the grass to get wet. So that's a given fact. My other example would be, If the sun shines, you expect it to be warm. So if the sun shines, you expect it to be warm. That's a given. So basically I've used if plus present simple plus present simple when I'm talking about a situation that's generally true. Please have a look at my examples on the screen. Again, you could see my verbs are conjugated with the if plus a present simple plus a present simple. I'm not going to start using the words clauses. I might come back in the future and make this a bit more complicated, but since this is an introductory video, I'm not going to start telling you about a main and a dependent clause, because I think that might just be too off-putting. But I should mention that in some other cases you might see this described as the main clause as a dependent clause. I'm going to keep it simple. The next conditional I want to look at is a first conditional. So I'm moving up from 0 to 1. And to conjugate this conditional, ladies and gentlemen, to keep it quite simple for yourselves, we're going to use if plus present simple plus the simple future plus the infinitive. So I'm going to use one verb that's in the present simple, another verb that's in the simple future, plus another verb that's in the infinitive. The infinitive simply means the root form of the verb, which takes the word to, T-O. My example would be, if you protest in Sierra Leone, you will go to jail. My example would be, if you protest in Sierra Leone, you will go to jail. So my first clause, I don't want to use the word clause, the first part of my sentence, if you protest in Sierra Leone, is in the simple present. You will go to jail. Will plus infinitive. That's in the second part of the sentence. In the second clause or the second half of the sentence. I'm looking at a situation that is imagined but will happen dependent on another one occurring, and we usually expect this to be where you're looking at where there's a law in place or where the situation is acceptable depending on something else happening. Please have a look at my examples on the screen. I want to look at the second conditional. I'm moving up from 0 and 1 to the second conditional. Again, I'm using basic terms so as to make these quite easy for yourselves to understand, because conditional tenses are quite tricky for speakers of other beautiful languages, but I want to show you how you could master them. And I'm going to use if plus the past simple And I'm going to use another word which we've already worked with, which is would, would, which I introduced yesterday as a modal verb plus an infinitive. An infinitive is a verb in the root form. It usually takes to, or sometimes it looks like the present simple. So I said the infinitive might look like the present simple without an S, or you might find it takes the word to. Please look at an example of an infinitive on the screen. And my second conditional would be, if I won the lottery, I would marry a Sierra Leonean man. My example would be, if I won the lottery, I would marry a Sierra Leonean man. So my first part of the sentence, my first phrase, if I won the lottery, is in the past simple. And I've used another verb which is in the past tense, the modal verb, would, plus a verb that is in the infinitive, marry. So the form is if plus past simple plus would plus infinitive. Please have a look at the examples on your screen. I would also want to move on to the third conditional. I've moved up from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. The third conditional works like this. It's conjugated with the prepositive plus past perfect, would, plus have, plus past participle. I started off looking at tenses and introducing all those words because I knew that when we came back, we were going to build on those tenses. If you find in this video hard to understand, I'm going to ask you to place pause at this juncture and go and have a look, or go and have a read of my other articles on the page about tenses, or maybe go and watch earlier videos so you can understand I'm just building on that knowledge today. So the third conditional works with if plus past perfect plus would plus have plus past participle. I know conditional tenses are quite hard to grapple with. I'm going to make them very easy to understand. So if I had gone to bed at 9 o'clock, I would have woken up at 6 a.m. If I had gone to bed at 9 o'clock, I would have woken up at 6 a.m. Had gone is the past perfect tense. We've worked with the modal verb would. We looked at it yesterday. Plus a past participle, have woken up. Because woken is a transitive verb, I have used the verb plus an object, woken up, to complete the meaning of the verb. Again, we've looked at transitive and intransitive verbs. If you don't know what they mean, please just type transitive verbs in the search box on my page and you might see where I explained them last month. So the third conditional works like this. If plus past perfect plus would plus have plus past participle. I'm going to go quiet as you have a read of the examples on the page. Now, having made it so basic, I got to then explain to yourselves that there are other words that are used when we work with conditional tenses. I've worked with if. Do you know any other parts of speech that if functions as? How else might you use the word if? Have you watched our video on parts of speech? The different videos on the page that explore parts of speech as well, ladies and gentlemen. I'm simply building on your knowledge today. You might see conditionals where you have the expressions unless, should, as long as. I'm not going to grade them. I'm just going to give you examples, and in a later video I might come and complicate things a little bit more and show you how they work. Unless you book your flight in advance, you won't get a seat in the plane. Unless you book your flight in advance, you won't get a seat on the plane. So, have a look at my tenses. I've looked at the present simple and the simple past in the negative. I'm going to say it in another way so we can all understand. Unless you book your flight in advance, you will not get a seat on the plane. I have used a verb in the present simple and a verb in the future simple negative. You might also see conditionals that work with should. You should pay your taxes or you might get arrested. You should pay your taxes or you might get arrested. Please have a look at my modal verbs on the screen that express a condition. If you're unfamiliar with modal verbs, please type modals in the search bar on my page and you'll see the various articles and videos on modal verbs. I should also explain that conditionals work with various tenses, not only the past simple or modal infinitives or perfect tenses. By now, when I use these expressions, I expect you to understand what they are because I have introduced them in earlier videos. I'm just going to give you an example of conditions in various verb forms and I'll identify them afterwards. If you owe Peter money, you must pay it back today. Simple. Simple present. If you're feeling tired, you can go and have a lie down. Continuous. Present continuous. If Alimami had time, he would have wronged me. If Alimami had time, he would have wronged me. Past, simple, and present perfect. If the generator was working, we would have had electricity. Was working. Past continuous. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go quiet as you have a read of the examples on the screen. I'm going to leave it at that today. I'm going to let you have a read of my examples. I will come back and complicate things a bit more. I like using the word complicate. As usual, if there's anything that you don't understand, please leave a question or comment under the video, and I'll come back and explain it in a way that you might understand. Whatever you get up to today, ladies and gentlemen, do have a nice and pleasant one.